Chag Sameach, happy Passover. Those beautiful flowers you saw at the beginning of this video really did bloom in my yard last year. This year, spring is very late and Passover is very early, and so my yard is still full of snow. But nevertheless, I'm going to share with you a Passover story, a true story. I met the people this happened to, but like I do with most of these stories, I'm going to just tell it generic for the sake of privacy. Now, in order to understand the story, you have to know that there's a little ritual that we do right before Passover. We clean all of our house, our kitchen, everything, get rid of all the leavening. And not only is it forbidden to eat leaven during Passover, it's forbidden to own it or to have it be seen in your home. And so we have to get rid of everything. And then the parents usually take and some little bits of comets, maybe a little bit pieces of bread or whatever, wrap them up in a little piece of tissue or something that they can hide them around the house without them spreading crumbs. And then you go at night and in the evening and you take a feather and a candle and a wooden spoon and you go around, you sweep up all those little pieces that you've hidden. And then in the morning, many communities meet together and they burn them. If you can't actually burn it, then you can just throw it in the garbage, but that symbolizes getting rid of it, and that's called bital kametz, to get rid of the comets. Now, there was an Orthodox Jewish boy who had found out about factory farms, and he also had been studying Tsar Bali Chaim, the principle that we don't cause suffering to animals. So he got to wondering about the feather that they use for this ceremony. Now, when you live in a big city, you don't have your own animals or birds to get feathers from, so they would buy a little kit that comes with a feather and a wooden spoon and a candle to do the ceremony. It looks something like this. Now, this boy got to thinking about, where does that feather come from? Is there cruelty involved? Are you using a feather that it's a product of cruelty in order to do a mitzvah? And he didn't think that that would be right, so he asked at the store where they sold these, at the Jewish store that sells yarmulkes and menorahs and other things, and they had these little kits. And he asked the man at the store, where do these feathers come from? And the man told him, well, I don't know. I just order them. The warehouse sends them. I don't know where they get them from. Well, after asking around, he found out they probably were white turkey feathers. And white turkeys are not a natural bird. They are raised specifically for the meat industry. So more than likely, this feather came from some place that was crowded like this. So the boy goes to his father and he said, when I was in the store, I also found out that some people don't use a feather anymore. Some people use a little whisk broom, and they actually sell these in the store to be used for bital kametz. So why don't we use this instead? Then we won't be using a feather that's coming from a cruel factory farm. His father looked at him, very pleased, and said, I'm very glad, my son, that you are thinking of things, that you're studying and learning and applying the things that you're learning. But the issue is bigger than this. He said, for hundreds of years, our ancestors have always done this with a feather and a wooden spoon and a candle. And this is what my grandfather did. It's what my father did. And as you know, millions of our people were killed in the Holocaust in Europe, and a whole civilization was wiped out. And we are the people who still carry the memories of our ancestors. And if we were to change all of these things, it would be dishonoring your grandfather, your great-grandfather, your great-great-grandfather. And so we are going to continue to do it with a feather. Now, that might be the end of the story, except for this. And what a lot of people may or may not know is that geese and ducks shed all of their primary wing feathers, the big wing feathers, all at once, usually in June or so, right after their eggs hatch. And that's because they're not going to be flying anywhere. The little goslings will be swimming in the water with them. They gradually grow a new set of feathers, and the young birds grow up and they have a new set of feathers. And so when fall comes, everybody's able to fly south. Now, these are white feathers that came from my pet goose, and I collected all of these over a matter of a couple of days. They naturally fall out of the bird. There's no harm to the bird done. and I collect them. I've used them for crafts. I've given them to people for pens, and I have used them for Bital Kametz, for the little ceremony. Well, to make a long story short, the boy in our story goes down by the lake one day where the geese are hanging out and breeding and finds dozens of naturally shed goose feathers all over the shore. So he picks up a bunch of these feathers and he takes them home and says to his father, "Abba, let's use these feathers next year. These are feathers. They are from a kosher species of bird. They're from a goose. They fell naturally off of the bird. No birds were harmed. So let's use these feathers." And his father said, "I'm very proud of you for finding a solution for this. Yes, we will use those feathers." And so this is a story that shows how it is possible to maintain your traditions while at the same time finding a way to do them without cruelty. Because after all, Passover, we are celebrating, the festival of freedom. We're celebrating coming out of Egypt where we were slaves. And to use feathers, from birds that are basically being kept as slaves, well, that does not seem quite right. Now, what happened after that, I really don't know. Did this boy grow up to be a vegetarian or something like that? I have no idea. But wherever he may be, and others like him, I give you my thanks for providing a wonderful way to do this without cruelty.